if you are a motion designer, and this is so important, you are not a keyframe setter alone.
I would challenge people to not be so black and white about it. Explore and play and let that shape your perspective.
That's Caleb and Shelby from Curious Refuge. They made a fake trailer using AI and it went viral and got them millions of views, which changed their career overnight.
We very quickly were given a microphone basically about, oh my gosh, this intersection of AI and film and storytelling, and what does this mean for the future?
In this episode, you're going to learn how to future-proof your career as a motion designer.
Number one, you have to test these tools to see what's possible.
How AI is impacting the motion design industry.
Over the next 2 years, it will become the norm in motion design to accept AI as a tool in your creative pipeline.
And what the best AI tools are to use as a motion designer.
The best path right now is using AI to supplement the current workflow that you have.
So you made an AI film that got millions of views, and I wanted to know how that happened and how it came about.
Yeah. Yes, we did. And in fact, it was about 1 year ago exactly today that happened. I think that the genesis of that project, and it was basically Wes Anderson does Star Wars. It was like a fun little parody trailer. And the funny thing is, that was not created to go viral. That was not created for any other reason outside of just curiosity. I had been playing around with a lot of the AI tools that were coming out about a year ago, and that's whenever we saw, I believe it was Midjourney 5 and ChatGPT 4. They kind of came out on the same month. And so it's like you have these tools that can process language at a really high level now. And you have these tools that can create images that look photorealistic, ChatGPT 5, or I'm sorry, Midjourney 5, the fingers were really messed up. But, if you kind of do a little fixing on the fingers and any weird parts, it looks fairly realistic. And so there were a few other tools like DID and just, some voice tools like 11 Labs. And I was like, I want to do an experiment and I want to simulate what it would be like for the average creator to step into a creative project. So I told myself I'm not going to use any high-end tools or software that's super complicated to use. And so I put that project together, put it out, and went to bed. It had 200 views. Fast forward to the next morning, it had 500,000 views on it was Reddit alone. It was going viral. And within the next 2 days, it was written about in most major news publications. News outlets were calling us. We very quickly were given a microphone basically about, oh my gosh, this intersection of AI and film and storytelling, and what does this mean for the future? And we had already been playing around with AI and reading books about, creativity and the future. So we already had quite a few opinions. But the thing that I think made our transition from a viral video to an online community very smooth is the fact that I had experience in the motion design world. I used to work at School of Motion. We were running Rebel Way, which is an online VFX school that does Houdini and Nuke training. And so it was very clear to me through those early experiments that there's going to need to be a community that helps to support artists through this transition.
Yeah, I guess what everybody is kind of worried about is what happens if creative directors come in, they say, okay, I got this, I can just use AI to kind of do what you were doing and I don't need you anymore.
I think to address what you're saying. So right now we have pipelines. We have pipelines that change pretty frequently. A TD's role is to figure out pipelines and, to work through what the tech is going to be for a project, a larger project. If, you're working on a VFX pipeline, but motion design, same way, we have pipelines. We go to, mood boards to get inspiration. We go to Illustrator to do our style frames. We animate them in After Effects. We do our animatic. We have a definitive workflow, and that workflow more or less has been kind of the same for the last 10, 15 years or so. AI is changing workflows. It absolutely will change the way that we approach our work. But in light of that change, the skills that you currently have really have the ability to step into each one of these new pipelines and get the most out of what is happening. And so if you are a motion designer, and this is so important, you are not a keyframe setter alone. I think a lot of people, in the motion design world are like, oh, I get super excited about like the wiggle expression. And like that it makes me so, and I get it. Like I do too. Like it's really fun to like learn like expressions and setting keyframes and drag the effect and connect the nodes and like, parent the thing. That's fun. I get it. But at the end of the day, you are a storyteller. And I think elevating in thinking about yourself conceptually as how am I communicating visual information to an audience? And how am I telling a story through movement, through animation, through the script, through color, all of these things? That is where my hope is motion designers and really everyone can press into.
At the HPA Tech Retreat, we were listening to a team who worked on this animated short film, and specifically the person who was in charge of like placing the bones in the character, right? Like he was talking about how this task would have taken him 2 days typically, like to put these bones in and like really get ready to direct the character. I think it was in Unreal Engine they were using. But basically, he's like, in the amount of time it took me to refill my coffee, I was able to put the bones into this character. And so I made a coffee, I came back, and I was directing the character for the next scene, which is so exciting and cool. And like to have a day and a half of his time now to be a storyteller and to see what he comes up with next. It's really cool. It does save time and it will change things, but it's elevating him to get to direct that story now, which is the fun part, really. Right?
Yes, I think that nobody enjoys rotoscoping. So having AI come in and, take care of rotoscoping for you is going to be really helpful. And a lot of times with AI, really what it gives you is a good first pass. And then you're able to go in and kind of push it and change things to make it exactly what you need. And so in so many instances, like we like saying that it's like working with a hungover assistant. Like they're creative and they're really great, but they also, go down some weird rabbit holes that you have to like direct them and change things. So really at this point, it is in no way a replacement for creatives. Again, it doesn't really have taste. And even the most advanced AI video tools like Sora, if you talk with people who are experimenting with Sora, that are using it on high level projects, we talk with them all the time. They're like, it's hard. It's hard to use. You get weird stuff. It's, you get really interesting visuals. I'm sure concert visuals will be really interesting with Sora here, because it's like you get crazy fever dream visuals. But that consistency and that control, that's so important whenever you're directing a project, especially a motion design project. Like motion design is one of the most nuanced creative disciplines when it comes to finessing movements and thinking about just the smallest details and how they play into the overall story. AI is not going to be very good at that. And so, I think there's some pretty immediate applications for motion designers, like, of course, creative exploration on the pre-production side, style frames. There's great workflows that we talk about in our AI advertising course where you can take style frames that are generated in AI, convert them into vectors that you can bring into After Effects. Like that's pretty powerful. That's interesting. But it's exploring those creative possibilities that I think will help you to understand and contextualize where it fits in your workflow.
Yeah. So like moving on a little bit to like, okay, we've established that we're a motion designer. Maybe we're thinking about using AI. What kind of tools would you recommend at the moment? Like, how are you seeing people implement this into their pipeline?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things that you can do. The best path right now is using AI to supplement the current workflow that you have. It's not building an entirely crazy new AI workflow. I did some experiments with like AI logo resolves and like, let's just take like popular logos and see how AI like uses MoGraph. And it turns every single logo into like the cheesiest, I don't know, off-market news graphics imaginable. Just like, it's terrible stuff. So it's so bad at like traditional MoGraph. What it's really good at is iteration and creative refinement. So just like multiple things. One, obviously style frames. That makes a ton of sense. Creatively exploring what is possible, letting your imagination, like using basically AI as Behance or using it as Google search, but like you're just like using, let's say, Midjourney to like just like come up with concepts. And then there's all just like the very practical things, whether it's script writing and you're just trying to like work through what the copy can be like for a commercial project that you're working on. generating the voices, like if you need a voiceover, like a scratch track, AI is pretty good for that. If you need to have some music for your project that's a specific duration and with a specific tone or style, there's some great AI tools. So there's like all of those immediate things. And then on the back end with editing, for motion designers specifically, having the ability to do like audio cleanup with the Adobe Podcast Enhance tool is like really powerful. We use Descript for like editing quite a bit, and that's really powerful. I think the AI color grading tools are like not the best just yet. They will be good, but they're not good yet. Directly inside of After Effects, I think there's a tool that does like stable diffusion images where you can just like create an image and like drop it in really easily. So tons of opportunity there. And then if you're doing like kind of animatic, like typically it's like you give an animatic to a client, they like give you some feedback, you like go back and forth. But with your animatic now, you actually can add some movement if you use tools like Runway or Pika.
And honestly, like simply using ChatGPT for organization and helping to make sense of your project, but also for as a teacher, really like for tutorials, like I'm like needing to do something in Premiere and I can't quite remember the keyboard shortcut. I can just honestly go into chat and be like, what's a keyboard shortcut for doing this thing? And like a few seconds I have it.
I wanted to ask about, as motion designers and animators, how do you feel like we can help to future-proof ourselves, like in this kind of new age of AI?
That's a very important question. I think number one, you have to test these tools to see what's possible. Whether you're fearful, whether you don't know how you feel about copyright, you just need to have a context for understanding what is and is not possible. And I really think you should be involved with an AI community. It could be Curious Refuge, and we would love to have you. We have tons of motion designers in the program. That is the last time I'm going to pitch the program. But even if it's not, you need to embrace this evolving world and learn. Like ongoing learning is very important. I think like more than ever, you're not going to be able to just rest on your laurels and, I know how to use After Effects. I don't need to learn anything more. I know how to use Cinema 4D. I don't like have to do anything else. That's not true. Like lifelong learning is essential if you're in a technological creative world. But I will say that if you begin to use these tools, like we've said time and time again, you're going to realize that there's a lot of work required to use them. And so what's going to be more important than ever is your taste, your ability to creative direct. And I think that the landscape and the offering that you can offer clients is going to be astounding. And so I'd say the opportunity is now. Like if we're looking at the adoption curve, we're like very early on with early adopters. Like the whole world is pointing and saying that is a weird thing that we're never going to use. Like we're about to get into the early adoption cycle where for motion designers, and I tend to think that motion designers are people that adopt things fairly quickly. And I would say that over the next 2 years, it will become the norm in motion design to accept AI as a tool in your creative pipeline. So if you embrace it now, you're going to have so many more opportunities.
I would say if you've been on this side of like fear related to AI, maybe find some gray. I would challenge people to not be so black and white about it, but try to embrace that liminal space and look at it.
Yeah.
Explore and play and let that shape your perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I really appreciate you both taking the time to talk to me about this because, obviously on the Motion Hatch podcast, we're hoping to have more conversations about AI and kind of navigate it with everyone and get people's differing perspectives and stuff like that. So I really appreciate you both for coming on the show today and talking more with us about AI and how we can utilize it as motion designers. If you want to learn more about using AI as a motion designer, then watch these videos next.